Hi, welcome to this hangout on the revision of what is one of ISO's most recognizable standards, ISO 14001. My name is Maria Lazarte, and I'm ISO Social Media Manager. This discussion comes in a very timely moment, just days after people from around the world took to the streets to demonstrate against climate change. ISO 14001 is one of the tools that can help in this fight, because it can help organizations to identify and control their environmental impact and to improve their environmental performance. By the end of 2013, over 300,000 organizations worldwide had been certified to ISO 14001. But like all ISO standards, ISO 14001 is periodically revised, and the next edition is expected in 2015. So what will this mean for users? And what are the main changes that we expect to see? Today, I have with me 5 experts who are involved in the revision who will answer these and other questions. I will now briefly introduce them, but please refer to our event page for their more detailed biographies. Joining us from the UK, we have Anne-Marie Warriors. Hi, Anne-Marie. She's the chair of the ISO subcommittee revising ISO 14001. And she's, of course, a leading expert in climate change and environmental issues. Now, joining us from the US, we have Susan Briggs. Susan is the convener of the working group of experts working on the revised standard. She has broad experience implementing environmental management systems and is the leader of the US delegation on environmental management. Now, going all the way to Japan, we have Maiko Hakuna, who's the Japanese expert participating in the revision. She has wide experience with environmental management, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability in the private sector. Now we jump to Malaysia, where we have Amarjit, who's the Malaysian expert involved in the revision. She has been involved in the development of other key environmental standards and in implementing those standards in various sectors. And finally, we have all the way from to Colombia, Daniel Trillos, who's the Colombian expert involved in the revision as well, and he's the chief of standardization at the Colombian national standards body, Econtech. So welcome everybody. Hello. We will start maybe with Anne-Marie. As chair of the subcommittee, could you maybe tell us a little bit about why an organization should be using ISO 14001?
So I think ISO 14001 is a really useful tool, whether you choose to go to accredited certification, as you recognize there be about 300,000 of those, but equally so, we've got a large number, that's just the tip of the iceberg, we've got a large number of people who work with ISO 14001 because it helps them to manage their environmental issues and their environmental performance, and to demonstrate to stakeholders very visibly in the Far East that they are doing their bit towards the environment.
Excellent. And if so many organizations are already using it quite successfully, why are we revising the standard?
So the standard is, the current version of the standard was published in 2004, probably the work completed in about 2003, I should know that. And it's about 11 years ago. Life has moved on a long way. You made a reference to the climate discussions. They've come a long way since then. The whole awareness of environmental issues, ecosystems, those sort of things have come a long way. And we need to begin to look at how ISO 14001 can continue to be relevant for modern organizations as they deal with the environmental challenges we face.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Anne-Marie. That's a very interesting introduction. Maybe we could move on to Susan now, who's as convener of the working group. You can maybe tell us a little bit more about what is the revision process like and where are we at now?
Well, we started in February of 2012 with our first meeting in Berlin. We meet about 3 times a year. There's about 90 of us all together, and we each have different experiences. We come from different sectors. Some are new to the ISO process, but some have been involved since the first initial development of ISO 14001. which gives us great historical perspective on the standard and the issues behind it. We share our concepts and our issues and our views on those various issues in order to reach consensus on what are the specific requirements that we're going to be incorporating in the new standards. The meetings are long. We try to have some fun and bond as a group, but most importantly, we're all learning from each other.
Well, thanks for that, Susan. It's great to have a little peek into the inside of these discussions. Maybe Maiko, as an expert coming from Japan, you can tell us a little bit more about how the committee makes sure that the needs of different users are taken into account, because if we remember, like, there are over 300,000 users using certified now to this standard, and they come from over 170 countries. So how does the working group deal with that?
Yes, besides the discussion in the working group coming from all the world experts, we conducted also the user survey, a global user survey in last year. This survey question reflected some topics from future challenges of EMS that comes from like future perspective in the next 20 years. And it was translated into 11 languages and distributed to the world, every national
I think
member,
you seem to be cutting
the country.
Maybe can you just rephrase what you just said? Yeah.
Okay, it was translated into 11 languages and distributed to all over the world through the national member bodies, and we got answers like 5,000 participants from more than 100 countries. And the key findings from this survey was that there are like top 3 topics that the user have seen that they are most preferable to be addressed within this revision. That would be prevention of pollution. This is very natural and very familiar for us from the last or current version. And the other new 2 will be the life cycle thinking and eco-efficiency. And they are reflected into this revision work.
Thank you, Maiko. So it's very interesting to see that the committee carried out a survey in so many languages to really get the input from users around the world. Perhaps we can move on now to the question that many have been waiting to hear, and that is, what's new with the revision? What are the changes, the main changes that we expect to see? I mean, of course, we're still not, we're still at the DIS stage, which is the draft international standard stage, and there's still some time to go. But perhaps Susan can tell us a little bit more about what's new so far.
Well, the standard is going to look very different due to the standardized management system structure for all management system standards. The look and some of the terms are going to be different. So we have some new clauses, some new terms that we're going to be using. But primarily from a technical point of view, the real changes come with the increased focus on sustainable development. We want to not only prevent pollution, but we want to protect the environment from harm and degradation. So we've incorporated that thinking into the standard. Another area is just a more strategic view of environmental management within the organization and focus on environmental performance. Not just within the fence line of the organization, but products and their final disposal.
You seem to have cut down. Could you repeat what you just said? The last phrase.
Okay, so we want to go beyond focusing just on preventing pollution, but also protecting the environment from harm and degradation. We've incorporated that in the standard, and looking at environmental performance, not just of the operations of the organization, but also the products that they create and their use and final disposal.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Susan. Perhaps we can get the experts' views from the different countries as well regarding and what's new with the standard. Perhaps we can start with Amarjit, who's joining us from Malaysia.
Oh,
hi, Amarjit. Yeah.
Hi, how are you? Right, okay, just building on what Susan said, especially on protecting the environment. Of course, in the current version, we talk about prevention of pollution, but in this revision, we are expanding that thinking to protecting the environment. But of course, it's within the context of the organization. And when you talk about protecting the environment, the things that we are requesting or requiring organizations to think about is what are your commitments to protect the environment, and this of course could include sustainable resource use, climate change mitigation, adaptation, protecting the biodiversity and ecosystems, etc., as well as prevention of pollution. And of course, to me, these are some of the issues that we already see in other standards like ISO 26000. These are some of the issues that are mentioned there. And to me, like Susan said, that this is building on the concept of sustainable development. And the other thing is about life cycle thinking. This revision is also, I mean, although the current standard already addresses life cycle thinking, but it's a bit more explicit in this version. Okay, and this is where you're supposed to think about the products, activities, services, until its use phase, disposal, etc. And to me, in this part of the world, that applies to us very much because most of the industries here are in the value chain, supply chain. Okay, and the good thing is when organizations think about this, they are already on the path of sustainability without even realizing it. Okay, and as you know, even companies, especially small and medium companies, they are a bit intimidated by terms like sustainability. But by getting them to think about these concepts of protecting the environment and life cycle approach, they will already be on the path of sustainability without even realizing it. So I think that's very beneficial.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Amarjit. That's quite interesting, and it's true, it's a big issue for small and medium enterprises. You know how they can use the standard. How we can make it easier for them to use the standard. Perhaps we can also get the view now from another country, Colombia. Danielle, perhaps you can tell us a little bit more from the Colombian perspective, in your own perspective. How will the changes impact organizations?
All right, thank you. One of the most important changes for some of the organizations in Colombia is the shift from the improving or continually improving the management system to actually improve the environmental performance and to use this management system to improve the performance, not only from the organization, but only for their products and services, and that would be aligned with what was mentioned before for the life cycle thinking, that the environmental performance will be improved along the value chain. That's one of the things that, at least in our national committee, they are very happy with this change in the view of the environmental management system.
Thanks for sharing that, Danielle. Going back to Maiko, perhaps you could tell us a little bit more from Japanese perspective.
This is a Japanese perspective. Yes, in Japan, I think we are putting a focus on a strategic management system. Well, this time in this revision, this is much affected from the high-level structure, which is the result of alignment between multiple management system standard within ISO. So the alignment impacted or brought in a new structure into our environmental management system, which is, like Susan mentioned, strategic and thinking of the context of the organization. And taking into account this context of the organization into the risk-based approach management, like addressing threats and opportunities and risks, and incorporating these topics or issues that are important for organizations to the operational management. So I think this is very familiar actually to every top management who's conducting a company like a normal management system in a normal system. And also there's a new requirement for the top management. It is top management responsibility to incorporate the EMS requirement into their business processes. Business process means like design or procurement or even human resource management. So it's quite beneficial to the organization and also top management to address or implementing this new version of EMS standard.
Thank you, Maiko. If I may ask you like a question, what would you say for you personally is the most important change in the standard so far? Yeah. So what would you say is the most important change from your own opinion as an expert that's been involved with environmental standards for a while now?
Or the flow itself, to taking into account or consider the context of the organization, and the risk management framework itself is very new and a very important change for me.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Perhaps I can pass on that question as well to Amarjit. What would you say for you personally is the most important change that users will see with this new edition?
I think there are many changes. However, I think the fact that this revision is trying to make sure and ensure that environmental performance is brought at the discussion table at the board level or at top management level. It is trying to incorporate environmental decisions into day-to-day business decisions, strategic decisions for the organization. To me, that's a key thing that this revision is trying to address, and I commend that, because like I said, it's not that the current version does not expect that from an organization, but maybe it was not as explicitly written in the current version. So I hope that with this new approach or thinking or making it more explicit, the environment will become one of those core agendas in meetings discussing strategy and directions of organizations.
Okay, well, thanks for that. That's quite an inspiring comment as well, that we're trying to really get the environment out there in the agenda. So perhaps Danielle, you, if I could ask you the same thing, what would you say for you is the biggest and most important change so far?
Well, I agree with Maiko and Amarjit. I think the context, to analyze the context of the organization and to have this, I don't know, to involve somehow the interested parties within the environmental management system, and that will be very good. And also, I think the making explicit the life cycle thinking when you are analyzing the environmental aspects of the products and services, and you have to take into account that it's not just what you do within your organization, but that the products and the services have a life cycle, and they come from somewhere, and they will finish in some place, and you have to analyze that. That will be a very, very important change.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Daniel. Maybe Anne-Marie, could you tell us a little bit more about the Annex and Common Management System elements and why this is important?
So ISO decided quite a while ago, actually it goes back well before this document appeared, because we decided with 9001 and 14001 about, what, 14 years ago, Susan? That it would be good if we made clear to the users, because many users use 9001 and they use 14001, so it makes sense that they have a common framework. So eventually ISO decided that all its management system standards would have a common framework, a common box, if you want to, a wrapping that would help you to understand. If you picked it up, you would have recognizable elements that you'd come backwards and forwards to. And that common framework actually appeared as a requirement in what's known as ISO directives. That's the rule to our standard writers, in time to influence both the current revision of 9001, this revision of 14001, as well as the emerging new health and safety standard, ISO 45001, as well as many other standards. And it will be incorporated into many of them. In fact, as of last year, we already had 7 or 8 management system standards that uses this common framework. Mm-hmm. But inevitably, when you've got a common framework coming out, as I think Susan and all the others have reflected, so both Maiko, Daniel, and Amarjit have reflected, it means new terms and new definitions, a new way of everything laying out. And some of that's what brought us onto this conversation about the organizational focus on environment at strategic level. So I think it's very positive and a very good development. It presents some challenges. I think the group will recognize that. What do we mean by risk? What do we mean by this? But it also, overall, I think it'll be very good for users, because they'll be able to have elements that'll go, okay, that's what it means in other standards as well.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think it's quite important to highlight that we are trying to make our management systems standards a little bit more consistent, to make it easier for organizations to use, and we want it to be the standards as helpful as possible for users. Now, I would like to ask you, Anne-Marie, actually, a little bit more about this new revision, and when will the users who are already successfully implementing ISO 14001 have to conform to the new standards, and what does it mean for the ones who have been certified to this already?
Maria, I'd like to divide my reply up into 2 halves. Let's talk about those organizations that do not have an accredited certificate, which is the majority of organizations. I talked about the tip of the iceberg before. So if you have an ISO 14001 system that you're using either because you're choosing to do it yourself or for other reasons, you're picking bits or whatever, then this change means please pick up the new standard when it arrives and start seeing how you could make this work for you. But if you are one of the 300,000 organizations, as I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg, that have an accredited certificate, then the International Accreditation Forum has announced that they will do the same as they're doing for 9001, and that is what's known as a 3-year transition period. So the intention is for the standard to be published in mid-2015, so somewhere between July and September. We don't know quite yet. We have to wait for ISO as well. And when that happens, you, as an organization with an accredited certificates, have got 3 years before your accredited system has to comply with 14001 2015. A bit like the same advice that applies to anything. Actually, you know what? Pick up the standard when it appears and start seeing how you'd integrate it. It doesn't mean you have your system have to be audited to comply with it, but it's useful to start thinking about it. We haven't talked about the changes, but I think looking at the challenges the system and people have had, there'll be a lot of discussions about what this means or what that doesn't mean, and it'd be useful to start thinking about that wherever you are in the organization. For most organizations, the draft international standard is actually available as a public domain document. So you could actually start now if you wanted to, assuming we get a good positive vote in November.
Thanks for that, Anne-Marie. That is quite good advice, actually, to tell users potential users, future users, and current users to start looking at the draft international standard as soon as they can to be ready for when the latest edition comes out. Perhaps we can get some information on where we can get this GIS, and also, can anybody comment on the changes so far? And is it possible for people to get involved and to have a say? Maybe Susan, you can give us a little bit more background on this.
Yes. The document, as was mentioned, is at the draft international standard stage. So it is open for formal comments by each country and their representatives. The comment period started at the beginning of September and goes until the end of November. So this is a perfect time to get a hold of this, go to your national standards body, get a copy of the standard, and review it and start making comments. This is our last opportunity for technical comments. So get your comments in. In order to get involved in the actual revision process, besides formal commenting, go through your national standards body and nominate yourself and get elected to be an expert or an observer to the revision process. And join us in Tokyo in February.
Thank you, Susan. So if you're wondering, for all the participants, if you're wondering who your national standards body is, you can find the list on www.iso.org/members. Just one more question, Susan. Where could we get a hold of the draft international standard?
You have to contact your national standards body and get the copy that way.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. I think we're pretty much at the end. Is there like a last word of advice that anyone would like to share? Perhaps Anne-Marie, last word of advice?
I'm not sure it's last word of advice. I think there's two comments from me. First of all, I'm amused because this is the greatest number of women I've seen talking about environment for a long time. Daniel, nice to see you on here. You're slightly surrounded by all of us, so that's good fun. It's also nice to see this many women involved at this level in this development, so thank you all of you for joining. Daniel, thank you for joining for Colombia as well. I think the most important comment is the same that goes for any change. So change looks really scary, but actually guess what, it isn't. It's just a question of starting in one corner and getting on with it. And I wish my wall behind me was as pretty as yours, Susan, but they were to have been green, but guess what, I couldn't make it.
Well, thanks for that, Marie. And I think I was also impressed by the same thing that you said. I'm surrounded here by 4 women, and of course, Danielle. And it's great that we are all out there fighting for the environment and for climate change. Well, to fight climate change, which is a big issue right now. Well, thank you all for joining us for this first of its kind event for ISO 14001. This is part of a series of Hangouts where we're trying to connect the experts who are behind the standards and some of the users of standards with the broader public and the future users and other experts involved in using our standards. Thank you all for joining from your different countries. I know it was not easy to find a common time for all of us to meet. It's 5 a.m. in Colombia and 7 p.m. in Japan, so this is quite something. But you know, this is ISO. We're international, and I'm glad that we can all get each other here together in one place to talk about this great work. So thank you all, and goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank